so a couple of people are texting me, actually asking how they can make a comment. If you have a comment or need to speak when it's your turn, we will let you in at that time. Specifically, Steve Pixley. Well, I don't see Steve Pixley on here. You would need to be on Zoom and not on YouTube if you're going to participate in the meeting. For anybody on YouTube right now thinking they can participate that way. But let's get started here with public comment on non-agenda items. Does anyone have a public comment? I am not seeing anything, so we will move on to the approval of the board minutes for November 5th. Any comments or a motion from the board?
Yeah, thanks, Allison. I had just a quibble about the wording. I'm on the paragraph around line 75 where Susan Dorr is making a response. Actually, the next paragraph at 82. It says at the conference we emphasized. Well, they've changed voice from a impersonal third person to first person in this paragraph, and minutes probably should not be done that way unless they're in quotes and it's a direct quote. So I don't know who we is. And further down it says she and Audra and I, and I don't know who she and Audra and I were. So in general, we could the wording should be in third person. Again, I was an English major, so that's the kind of thing that just leaps out at me and drives me crazy.
Yes, my dad also. Is that something that Audra, that can be cleaned up?
Yes.
Behind the scenes?
Yep, absolutely.
I thought overall the minutes were quite well done. So thank you for that. Is there a motion?
We'll move to approve with that linguistic correction.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved and seconded by Ken. All in favor? Do a roll call, I guess, or just Allison, Ken, and Chris. So all in favor, and no Chris Nolan yet, right?
Aye.
Yes, aye.
Okay. All right, then. Moving on to recognition of Katrina Oakes. Do we have Katrina with us tonight, or do you want to take that on, Audra?
We do not have Katrina with us. I think probably a time when we could do this in person would be much better. You know, we thought it would be really important to recognize Katrina's 25 years of service. You know, in the role as town clerk, it's a really visible upfront role. So I think it would be really nice to try this again when we can do something in person and ask Katrina to come in, even though she's not somebody who likes to be recognized. I still think it would be, you know, very nice. So if this is something that we can table for now and come back to at our next meeting, I think that that would be ideal.
Okay, that makes lots of sense. Moving on to select board member reports. Who would like to start? Chris, so I see that you're not muted, so do you have anything?
Well, I'll throw out a usual, you know, I've got to say something about the snowball. It may be cold and chilly, but that means that they're going to start making snow. There's also a meeting, public meeting on December 8th at 6:30 to present the multi-season recreation plan for the Snow Bowl with some of the folks from the SE group or the consultants who are hired to do that. So that's December 8th at 6:30. We had Harbor Committee. They're working on fees, hopefully for the, we'll get wrapped up in the next meeting. And I just before I forget, they did vote to approve, they voted to approve the Windjammer pier, all those slots. So in the form in the packet, it does not reflect their votes to approve those pieces, but they did actually make that vote. Just so I don't forget to say that later on when we're talking about those approvals.
Great, thank you. I was kind of wondering about that and nervous about moving forward with voting on something if I had no idea what the Harbor Committee thought. So that's great to know.
That. Could you try
Oh.
again?
One other thing, a couple people commented to me recently about agendas items and trying to avoid abbreviations and internal language in our agendas. So for example, we have short-term rentals on the agenda tonight, but it's STR on the public agenda, and a lot of people who haven't lived with STRs, as some of us have over the last few years, don't know what the language means. So I think it's really important that on our agendas we have open, clean language. That's all I got.
All right, thank you. Ken?
Yes, the Cemetery Association was scheduled to meet today, but they canceled the meeting because the town office was closed and the whole of downtown was closing up. So they will meet next month. The other event is there's an ongoing Windjammer Winterfest is being formulated again this year. Winterfest is a celebration, a community celebration, which is held every year, and it is the last weekend, the last Saturday in January 31st. And that's the weekend before the Toboggan Nationals. And there will be, as usual, there will be the polar plunge, there will be ice carving, music, hot food, the doggy fashion show, and kids events inside and out on January 31st. So there'll be the request to close the street will be showing up before us probably next session, but that's something to look forward to. They purposely bookend that winter weekend so that the Toboggan Nationals are on one weekend and Winterfest is on the previous weekend. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Chris, do you have anything?
No, I don't at this time. Thanks.
Okay. From just a couple things, the last library meeting, they were discussing something that might be of interest as they've moved forward with the Wabanaki historical signage project that came from that fifth grade presentation that we got maybe a couple of years ago now, and they've been working with a group of people to come up with language for kind of celebrating or educating about the history of the Wabanaki presence in the area, and there will be eventually some signage going up in Harbor Park, and then possibly in some other parts of town as well. But that was great to hear that that was moving forward. They also got some FEMA reimbursement and are feeling hopeful about another portion of that actually coming for some of the storm repairs and a portion of the library building, which is great, a little bit better than we had been thinking. Another thing is Miko Solid Waste Board met, and one thing that we voted on is moving forward something that was actually discussed extensively in 2003, which was a connected trail along the back of the Jacobs Quarry, which is now our landfill, connecting to the YMCA. And then there were also plans to continue down the rest of the the Rock Road toward Rockport Harbor and Lime Rock Street. The Midco Solid Waste Board voted to endorse the Pathways Committee concept and presentation that had been originally presented to them back in 2003. And people have been walking along this trail for years and years, but sort of in an unadvertised, if you know it's there, you know it kind of way, starting on Linden Lane in the Greenfield subdivision, and then around the back of the landfill and out to the Y. And the Midco Solid Waste Board voted to allow moving forward with some public signage, which actually tells people where to go and where not to go, and also to move forward with language that could be added to the Midco Solid Waste deed to kind of memorialize that and protect that public access for the long term. So that was really exciting and is actually one of the things that we may touch on briefly on the agenda tonight is that Linden Lane common area. One of the things that happened back in 2003 is that voters actually voted for the town of Camden to acquire that parcel as part of this trail system. And in the last year or so, as we've been, the Pathways Committee has been resurrecting some of those plans, and the Midco Solid Waste Board was ready to move forward with officially allowing the public access. We kind of realized that for whatever reason, after voters approved that transfer, it didn't actually happen. So wanting to get that on the books too. So those are my updates. What's that, Ken? Did I see your hand?
No.
Okay. All right. So that is it for Select Board reports. Town Manager's report.
So I don't have a lot. There's been a lot of getting ready for the winter, so bringing in the ramps from the public landing as well as the seasonal bridge, and then other work that Public Works has been doing to just get everything ready for the winter and gear up for plowing season. I have been working with Jeremy and a few other folks at Maine Municipal Association on trying to proactively put forth some proposals in regards to housing legislation. So looking at more of the gap in any sort of state level program for middle income and workforce housing, which is a particular problem, and also looking at some of communities like Camden, and it's the same in all coastal communities, really from Hancock County down to York County, where if you look at sort of the cost of construction and the cost of land, it really makes it sort of impossible for a lot of projects to be financially viable, even with the existing programs that the state has. So we've been, kind of looking at what are the causes, a lot of those gaps, and how can we fill them through legislative advocacy and certain programs that could be developed. So I think that there's a lot more to that than what I can go into in an update. And I think at some point it would be really great to talk about it with the entire select board, because it's a huge problem in Camden, but it's also sort of a statewide issue that I think that we can certainly lend our voice to advocating for kind of closing that gap. And also I have a more fun update about Christmas by the Sea. So Holly just wanted to remind everyone to dress warm for Friday. The parade's going to begin at 6 p.m., but despite the forecast for very cold temperatures Friday evening, the Christmas by the Sea parade is a go. We have nearly 30 floats that are signed up. And she said Santa has his bags packed, and we're really excited for this to kick off a really fun weekend of activities, and it's like the beginning to the holiday in Camden. So we hope that everybody attends. It's been just an increasingly bigger deal over the past few years. We've had, folks come from all over Knox County to participate. So we're looking forward to that again. And that's
Audra,
it.
what is the status of the Roston Avenue Bridge?
So I really would not like to give any more sort of like it's going to happen, it's going to come in on this date because it's been pushed back so many times. So we're really just waiting for the manufacturer to finish manufacturing the bridge. That's been the holdup all along. And they've given us a new date, but I don't even want to say it publicly because we've been given a new date so many times and it's come and gone.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that it for your
That's
update,
it.
Audra? Okay, so moving on to discussion items. December workshop topic, STR program overview and update. So are we setting a date for a workshop or are we talking about that right now?
This was to set a date for a workshop and just make sure that it's not to talk about short-term rentals tonight. We just wanted to discuss with the select board having the second meeting in December be another workshop and having the short-term rental program be the topic.
Is there a reason why that needs to be a topic?
Well, it's been, pretty much a year, like we've been able to fully implement the program. So we have a good idea of, good data on the program, good information in terms of implementation. So, I think it's a good opportunity to talk about all of that and, kind of look forward in terms of what we've learned and what kind of adjustments could be made and just, just looking at everything, given we're about a year out from, when we originally said we are going to be implementing the program.
Is that something that it can or should be done jointly with the planning board, or is the thought it would just be the select board?
I'm going to
I
leave
can-
that to Jeremy to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly have a workshop with them where we can include them. My thought, again, like what Audra's saying, is that it was going to be an update, provide you where we are, how many we've got registered, how the inspections have gone. There's, starting a program like this, we've got well over 100 people licensed, registered. I think 125, 135 or something. We'll get into that when we talk, but like Audra said, we've learned a lot, and I think there is some room for adjustments. And that's what we wanted to talk about, I think, is, I think from our perspective, sometimes it's far better to bring these things to you rather than and talk about them before we, propose something or come up with a new idea on something, how we may need to change it or tweak it. So that's what this was for. It was strictly just I think the wording on the agenda was maybe a little confusing, but yeah, it was to schedule this hopefully for December 16th, 18th.
Does it have to be is there enough content there that this would be the entire typical amount of meeting time, or is this something that we could make just as a discussion item during our normal meeting and have some of the other elements that we usually have? Why do this separately as a workshop as compared to a discussion item in a meeting with ample time given?
I guess we don't really have enough business to justify 2 full business meetings a month. So I think that you probably could do this as just a discussion item, but it would really compress the conversation. I think it would be harder to do the second part of what Jeremy was saying, which is, talk about how the program is going and have like that more open conversation about adjustments and, how we might want to approach it in the future. Because that's something that gets sort of condensed when it's just like one item on the agenda versus something that everybody's kind of focused on.
I would think that we could have an agenda where we have the usual, 3 or 4 bullets that we usually have, and this as the only discussion item, for example. And intentionally limit the other pieces, but that's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that in some way, the workshop we had with the cemetery committee, I thought was productive, and I kind of enjoy the sitting at a table and talking. Was sort of having some of those same thoughts as you, Chris, with wondering how much content there is and how much it's leading up to.
I'm sure some people in town, based on some of the stuff that we received, they probably would want to be able to talk about that too, and usually they can during a discussion item as well during a select board meeting. Not that it's a public, it's not a public hearing per se, but it's a discussion. So I would just be.
And again, what I was planning to do is give you an update on where we are. And then talk about, again, some things that we learned and some things that we can do differently. If you guys want to open it up to something bigger and different, taking another comment, that's, I think, different than what I was anticipating. And I think what Audra and I were planning to do, but I'm up for anything really, Chris. Leave that to the board. But I do think, I watched the, I didn't watch it, but your meeting workshop with the cemetery folks, I think there is some benefit to sitting around at a table and communicating and talking about programs that we do and how things impact property owners outside of like a formal meeting. So that's, I think, what we were just looking at, but I'll leave that to the select board and Audra to make that call, how you want to handle it.
Chris, so do you have any thoughts, having been involved on the planning board with crafting that ordinance? And
Yeah, no, I think there is more to it, but I think what would be helpful if we're going to do it. I mean, I hear your point, Chris. We could structure them to Chris's point. We could have a 20-minute business meeting where we get through anything that needs to be approved or agreed upon, and then adjourn the formal meeting and convene a workshop in the same evening. But I also think that taking the time to just do an informal, I think having the planning board be there would be useful, because I think it also could be a bit of a joint workshop between planning board and select board about short-term rentals, but also, we could also start talking about the comprehensive plan. We could take that time to do a little bit more than just an update and a review. We could, and I think that with where we have some new members of the planning board, having everyone in the room together would be really helpful as well for us to get to know them and them to know us, and just sort of talk about some planning.
I think that's a great point, Chris. So especially in light of, the next item on this agenda is talking about a couple of amendments that are state mandated. These are the first couple of a bunch of state mandated ordinance things that we have to do. And I think there's real room for having these conversations with you folks, letting you know what's on the horizon, how things are playing out at the state level, mandated to us on the planning side and land use side, so that when a public hearing or warrant articles get to you guys, you have a little more knowledge and a little more depth of the subject matter. I think is very helpful sometimes.
I really like the idea of a joint workshop with the planning board where a number of topics could be touched on. I have some, more comments on some of this shoreland zoning stuff and things that the Conservation Commission has discussed that they would possibly like to see combined into this or added. It's been a long time since we've done anything jointly with the planning board. I'd be more enthused about a workshop if it was expanded beyond just that one topic. Ken, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do like the idea, the concept of having an abbreviated business session so we don't get a backlog month after month. That we do have business that people do look forward to getting taken care of and their formalities checked off. So if that is a possible format to have an abbreviated business session first and then go into the workshop, I think that would be an efficient and effective solution.
How does that sound to you, Audra? Is that, could we leave open the short business meeting at the beginning if there are things that, you know, need to be done and then move into a workshop?
Yes.
In
Yep.
fact,
And
we could even maybe start, have the regular meeting from 6 to 6:30, and then the planning board workshop after that. Or is that too much of a Herculean effort to change the time of when the select board meeting starts?
That makes sense to me. What are your thoughts, Audra? Is that?
I mean, it's all up to you. You know, like I said before, we don't really have enough business to justify 2 business meetings a month. If there is anything, we can certainly put it on the agenda. And if everybody wants to start at 6, we can certainly do that.
Well, I was just thinking starting at 6 for the regular business that we usually have every couple of weeks, and then have the other meeting. That way it can be a separate meeting starting at 6:30, and we're certainly limited.
And that also would leave open the possibility if if there are not things that need to be acted on, then we
Yes.
ultimately
you just start at
we won't do that
6:30.
fix.
That's
But
correct.
It
Yep.
leaves open if there are things that people need, then it's, you know, leaving that open. So
Nice.
That's what
My
I'd be
only-
worried about is, go ahead. Go ahead,
My
Chris.
only concern with that is that it starts to get confusing about when do select board meetings start. And if sometimes it's 6 and sometimes it's 6:30, that starts to mess, you know, with what people are expecting.
That's
I
very
agree.
true.
Yes, if we haven't established month after month and year after year that it's 2 Tuesdays a month at 6:30, it's best not to mess up that schedule.
Yeah.
By the way, 2 weeks from tonight is December 16th. That's the date we're talking about.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, to Audra's point, if there are a few key things, there's not often that much. If there's something that needs to be acted and voted on for expediency, we can do that in 10 or 15 minutes at starting, you know, without sort of having it might be 6:30, it might be like that, just
Very, very good. Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah, and it would be it'd be helpful if you could email me and Janice, or just some of the topics that you would like to cover, because I think there could end up being just to make sure that we, you know, cover off on different things that you guys would like to discuss with the planning board.
Yeah, we definitely want to make sure we've got an agenda to have a workshop.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and I heard a lot of good ones, so I just want to make sure we don't miss anything that
well, and I
anybody
think going
has.
forward, we should be thinking about what other workshops, what other areas
Yes.
we want to. I think there are a lot of things that we can come up with there.
Absolutely. That's a really good point, Chris. So we actually I talked with the department heads about, you know, workshops and what kinds of things that they would like to work through with all of you. But it'd be really good to hear from the select board what you want workshops on and what we can set up.
yeah, I do hear a lot from the public that there's a desire for opportunities to talk about things a little more broadly when it's not related to a specific action item where they have to come and stand at the podium, but, you know, a chance to talk about, you know, the snowball, for instance. You know, every time that's an agenda item, I always find I have a lot of questions and, things that people want to talk about that don't quite fit into that, but there's sort of
I've got a list.
great. Who was that said that?
Kristen.
Oh, great. I'm sure the snowball is already on your list, so I don't need to
It's
ask
not
about
even
that.
one of them because it's already got its own workshop coming up next week.
Right.
Oh, really? So do we have to go to that one in order to?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll
No,
do
no,
my
I
best.
think he was just saying he's got a lot of other workshop
I've got
ideas.
several other things that we should be having this kind of talking about. So
Okay. Well, then, moving on to item number B, zoning ordinance amendments to go before the planning board. Just a primer with
Yeah,
more to
just a
come, I guess.
primer. Thank you, Allison. And as Audra suggested, or she mentioned earlier, working with MMA on housing stuff, trying to figure out how to address housing availability and affordability in the mid-coast. The state legislature's been doing this a lot, and all they've been doing is mandating zoning changes at the local level, which has a whole host of potentially a whole host of issues. So I'm sitting on the LPC's housing and subcommittee, working on some of these things, trying to push back a little bit on the zoning stuff, but some of the zoning stuff we have to implement. And one is LD 427, and that was an act to regulate municipal parking space minimums, which makes sense. If you recall, a number of years ago, we removed the requirement for parking spaces per square foot of type of use in the downtown. Restaurants and shops, etc. We got rid of. Hotels and motels still require parking in the downtown. But taking this step a little further, LD 427 requires you can't require more than one parking space per dwelling unit, and that is any dwelling unit. Not just affordable. There's an affordable housing overlay zone that we did a couple of years ago from LD 2003 that has some alternative parking requirements, minimums for affordable housing projects. This is for all dwelling units. This law applies only to communities' growth areas, and does provide for off-site parking as well within, I think it's 1,000 feet off the top of my head, or 0.25 miles. And so what I proposed, and we had a meeting with the planning board a couple of weeks ago. We drafted an amendment to facilitate this, and this would not just apply in the village extension, which is our growth area in town. This would apply to every lot, every zone that allows a dwelling unit. If you want to build an apartment and a house, you're just required to have one parking space for that dwelling unit. Some communities are going further and not requiring any at all, which is fine. I don't think it really matters, to be honest with you. I think the type of development we see in town is generally single family, and people are building parking to meet the needs that they have themselves. Some people are building small driveways, small parking spaces, and others are building larger ones. So this just would comply with that, with LD 427. It was a public workshop. Planning board talked about it very briefly. They have no issues with it. We scheduled a public hearing, or they did, for December 18th. There's a public hearing on that. No one from the public spoke against it or for it. It's kind of one of those state mandated requirements that we're required to do. It makes sense from a housing perspective if you're building a lot of housing or building multifamily project. If you had to do 2 parking spaces as opposed to 1, 2 costs a lot more to build than 1 parking space does. And oftentimes there's an overbuild of parking on housing projects, which creates a whole host of issues, stormwater, etc. So that's what that is. You can ask me questions on this one before I get to the other one. I see Allison's got one.
Yeah, so why, first of all, do we have any areas of town where there are no parking minimums for housing?
No, the affordable housing overlay zone that we have, which applies in some zones if you're going to do affordable housing project. I think it's 2 spaces for every 3 units, I think, where you're allowed to get down to. But other than that, we don't have any any zones that don't require parking, like other than the downtown. We could do 0. We could say none for dwelling units if you wanted. I would not be opposed to that if that's what you're getting at.
That's my strong preference. I think that if people
Yeah.
want to develop housing and they want to cater to people that do not need a parking spot or don't have a car, that we shouldn't be getting in the way of that. And if they want to try to solve those parking problems in different ways by not having cars or whatever else, I want to leave that open.
To them. Yeah.
So unless there's a really good argument for,
I don't think there is. I think the minimum parking requirement goes back to when, urban sprawl or, suburban sprawl started, really. And we required big parking lots at development, shopping centers. We required every house to have two parking spaces. That's how it was. And from a planning perspective, across the country and across the profession, it is leaning towards letting the market drive it, do not require parking. The market will take care of it. You relieve a whole host of issues potentially, stormwater, pollution, a whole host of things. And it creates a more friendly, walkable community too when you do that broadly. So I would not be opposed to just removing the requirement entirely and let the voters have that make that decision in next June. No issue with that.
anybody else have any
Well, I've
burning
been
thoughts?
saying to get rid of those requirements for a while, but we also know that demographically, the idea of, as Jeremy says, those things come from 30, 40 years ago on an assumption of every family having 2 cars, and those numbers just aren't the same, and especially workforce housing, people who are coming and looking for housing in town Camden don't all have multiple cars and don't need.
Yeah.
And we just,
Yeah.
there are parking solutions, and it just ends up being a lot more paved surfaces. And we know that it's a huge hindrance on developers who are trying to make multi-units out of single units and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, it is. Agreed.
Okay. Next one, Jeremy.
All right. So would you like me to move that forward to the planning board at the public hearing? We can do that.
So-
I can.
So what is the sequence? This is something that we must vote on as a town because it's a zoning ordinance change and
Correct.
it's required by the state.
Correct.
So what's the question? Whether we modify it before going before the voters?
So here's how this will work, Ken, as I envision it based on what happened. So I had drafted a proposed change that just goes from 2 to 1. We had a workshop on that. And it is going to be posted, for public hearing on the 18th. At that meeting, the planning board will have a discussion. That's a public hearing that they're required to have. They'll have it. Likely they would go along. My gut says they'll go along with going down to 0. Don't require any. Doesn't mean none will be built, remember. Just go down to no requirement. They'll hold that public hearing. At that public hearing, they'll make a recommendation that they'll send it to the select board, to you folks, with a recommendation that you send it to voters in June. And then you will have maybe a workshop on it, but you'll definitely have a public hearing on it. And then take comment from the public. And then you will then have that hearing, and then you'll have a hearing for the warrant articles that are going to voters, and that will happen about like April, I believe. And then so you'll have 2 hearings, one for the code change, one with the warrant article. The planning board will have their hearing, and then it'll go to voters in June if you move it forward.
And
that
you
make sense?
referred to yes, thank you. And you referred to the 18th. You mean December 18th? There's a
Correct.
planning board
Hearing.
hearing. Thank you.
Yeah. And this is a perfect example why workshops are good. And I think can be helpful because, staff comes up with things, workshop them with the planning board. And then you guys are kind of out of the picture until it comes to you eventually after it comes through the planning board. And I think it's important and helpful to have these conversations ahead of time and discuss that with the planning board, let them weigh in on what you guys are thinking about this kind of issue. And then then I think everyone is, and this type of issue, I think everyone will get on board and send it to voters would be my guess. Make sense? Chris, you got any comment?
Nope, no, I don't have any sense. But that makes sense to me.
Okay.
Of what you said.
All right.
Okay, is that all? Do you have another one, Jeremy, or?
Yeah, LD 65, and that's done with parking. Thank you for that. That's very helpful, and I think that's a great idea to go down to 0. LD 65, this is an act to update the definition of coastal wetlands under the Natural Resources Protection Act and under shoreline zoning. This was signed into law last May, and it updates the definitions of coastal wetlands in, again, the Natural Resources Protection Act and Shoreline Zoning Act. The state DEP enforces and administers the Natural Resources Protection Act. The town administers and enforces the Shoreline Zoning Act. That's a state mandated minimum law. Municipalities can go further and do things more strict than the state's mandatory minimum. What they do, though, when they make changes like this, we have to adopt it. We have to move it. That's how we have to administer the code, because there's a new definition. I would say that we'll let you know that DEP already is using, because it's already signed into law last May. They're using, when they determine setbacks from the resource, this is just applies to the ocean, the coastal wetland, they're using that the standard that this definition uses, and that's the highest astronomical tide. And so I can go into that. I can explain it a little bit. In essence, the amendment establishes a new boundary where the shoreland zoning regulations commence. That's where they start, because shoreland zoning is from, if you're at a stream like Maguntagook River, or you're at Spring Brook, or you're on the lake, it's from normal high water line of those resources up to 250 feet, or up 75 if you're in a stream protection zone. On the ocean, it's from the coastal wetland, and there is not a definition for normal high water line. They don't use that standard. They use something right now. We use highest annual tide. This definition changes it to highest astronomical tide. That's what that does. For background, and I'm just reading from the memo I had for you, the difference generally is that the highest annual tide is the highest predicted tide over a specific calendar year, while the highest astronomical tide, known as HAT, is the highest predicted tide over a 20-year period, remaining constant for the 20-year epoch. The highest annual tide changes year to year, while the HAT is more stable long-term benchmark. And I will say all the regulators are using HAT now, the state regulators. That's what they're using. That's what the requirement is. The difference between highest annual tide and HAT is typically only a few inches, but can be larger in some years, and the difference is variable from location to location and site to site and year to year. In a year where the highest annual tide is the highest ever recorded within the 20-year epoch, the highest annual tide would be equal to HAT. And HAT is stable, long-term benchmark, and easy and good to use for regulatory purposes, and we have to do this, but it's a good thing to do. It's a good change, and I'm glad the state did it. It's very awkward right now. Well, not right now, but late spring, early summer, when the projects would come in that needed a DEP permit and needed our shoreline zoning permit, and we're looking at plan set, and we're like, okay, what's the setback here? And they're showing a DEP setback from the HAT, and they're showing our setback from the highest annual tide, and they need to be the same, and they should be the same, and this does that. This makes them the same. That's what that amendment does. Again, we had a workshop on this with the planning board. They had no issues with it. It's a state mandated requirement. It makes sense. Allison mentioned earlier shoreline zoning changes. I think there's other ones that we can pursue and should pursue. This is one that is state mandated, and we need to move this forward. There was no public comment. The planning board had no issues with it. I did talk to them about, just carrying this a little further, I did talk to them about possible other shoreline zoning amendments moving forward that the Conservation Commission would like to work on. So they're aware of that issue and aware that they're going to be looking at shoreline zoning, I think, a little more. That's all I have on that. Any questions? hopefully that explained it.
Yeah, a few things that I might send for wanting to talk about at the workshop, but that all sounds good
Sure.
to me. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that part of
No.
it?
Not that can't wait.
Okay.
I am meeting with the Conservation Commission tomorrow. They're having a meeting. Their regular meeting is tomorrow, and I'm meeting with them, and I think we're going to be talking about some of this stuff. So if people are interested, I think there's a time and opportunity to check that out too.
Great,
Okay.
thanks.
Yep.
See you there. Okay, moving on. I think for discussion item C, the Lupin Terrace and Linden Lane common lots, there was not enough time to get that all organized. So I'm going to propose that you heard my comment about the Linden Lane housekeeping from 2003, but I think we're going to propose to table this item until a future, more convenient time. Can I?
Yeah,
Okay,
that sounds, when we've had a chance to see some,
Material.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on to action items. Item A, confirmation of the town manager's appointment of Julia Merrill as the new town clerk and registrar of voters. Audra, take it away.
So anybody who's been into the town office within the last week has probably met Julia. So she is who's been hired as the new town clerk. And Julia she formerly worked at the Knox County Corrections as well as medical office before joining us at the town of Camden. She's been fantastic to have there. She's very ambitious. She's a real go-getter. Very willing to take on anything that's given to her. There was a good handover between Katrina and her, and Katrina's been very generous about being willing to come back and help Julia as she's learning her new position, particularly with things like elections that are only periodic. So we're very happy to have Julia, and this is just part of the confirming her appointment.
Great. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved by, was that Chriso?
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Chriso, seconded, I think, by Ken. I saw a hand there.
Right.
All those in favor? So I,
yeah, we have to do it by roll call, don't we?
yep,
That's-
so let's.
Well, good
just make
point,
sure.
Chris.
So Chris Nolan,
Yes,
Chriso,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
and an I from Allison. Okay, moving on to the 3-year Windjammer license agreements.
Can I just pause this and notify that there's a member who someone's on the Zoom who appears to be wearing a shirt and may not be aware that they're on camera.
Noted.
Currently at Flowers.
Mm-hmm.
We can either block that vision for now or notify that person.
Yeah, maybe it would be a good idea to turn off the screen for people that are not speaking. I think that can be hidden by the meeting host. Thank you, Chriso. Moving back again to the Windjammer licenses. Lots of information in the packet. Does anybody want to give us an overview? I think I heard that was all reviewed by the Harbor Committee.
They were all reviewed by Harbor Committee and all approved. The Windjammers, the day sailors, and the fishermen. I know Aaron Lincoln is here. He does have a slight modification request in his to allow both of his two one or the other of his two boats. Other than that, there's nothing new, and the harbor master may have any other thoughts, but they're all pretty much the same.
And did the Harbor Committee discuss the addendum request also?
It did not come up at that time, no. But it's a very minor, it's Aaron at Lincoln operates two vessels, and one of them ties up at the Windjammer slot overnight. And he is requesting, and in his contract, it says that only OLAD can tie up at, I think it's 10:45, can drop off and pick up at 10:45, and he's asking for OLAD or OWL, not both boats at the same time.
And is that something that the others can do also, or?
No, it's Aaron can speak more to it, or Steve can. It's a slightly different arrangement because he has the overnight tie up on the.
Well, I mean, I don't
Days
own
to
the
go.
overnight tie up, but
No, but you hold the lease on the, yeah, if Aaron wants to explain.
yeah, this is something I've already been doing. I'm just doing some housekeeping, if you will, because who knows how long all of us will do these things. So like I try to write things down and make it neat. But basically, one of my vendors has a trip that got over time needed to move up earlier and earlier, and instead of trying to change the whole day sailor schedule, which I thought would not be good for everybody, I just usually I leave at 8:45 in the morning anyway when I pay to spend the night on the town dock, and so I just take them out at 8:45 when I leave, and so that's no different. And then I have a slot that I can either use that I use, like I can move the OWL schedule around a little bit in the morning, but I don't always use that slot. So to drop them off, I don't use the OWL on that day in that slot, and I just come in quickly and drop them off.
Yeah, I just in the past, there have been times when some of this Windjammer stuff or day sailor stuff gets complicated, and we vote for things, and then I later find out that there was, somebody ended up feeling disenfranchised, or so I guess I'm just trying to make sure that that's not the
I've been doing
case
this
here.
for years, so I think there hasn't been any
Yeah.
complaints about that I know of. So I'm just cleaning up paperwork. That's a
It's
better
just
way.
sort of codifying current practice. And it does specify or not, so it's not a special, it's not two at once that anyone else
Right. Like,
wouldn't have.
I mean, I don't know. Did I sum that up well enough, Steve? I'm trying to do my best here.
Yeah, Steve, maybe you could unmute yourself and just it all sounds perfectly fine to me. I just want to make sure that it's not something that's perceived as being available to you, but not to others, or
Yeah, yeah. Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Yeah, yeah. No, he summed it up well. Again, this isn't something that I don't even think needs to be. It's something that happens. We all know it happens. I guess we just kind of want. Aaron and I had this conversation earlier, and I okayed it with him. It's fine because it doesn't change anything in the least. It doesn't give him more time. It's basically he just wanted to make sure. Hey, I'm doing this, and so I'm okay with it.
Great. That's very helpful. Does anyone else have comments? Not.
Well, yeah, just in general, thank you, Steve. So in general, are we at capacity? Or is there room for more day sailors or more windjammers or more lobster boats, or are we at capacity here?
Well, as far as day sailors, we are at capacity as far as the ordinance is concerned. There's only 7 permits allowed. There's 7 permits that are running. As far as the windjammers, at the head of the harbor, we have the same 3 beautiful windjammers we've always had: the Angelique, Mary Day, and Louis French. Of course, we lost at the end of the main docks. We lost the Grace Bailey and the Mercantile, but now Ray has the Swift at the end. If someone came in with another big boat and said, "I'd like to kind of go where the Grace Bailey used to be," that's something that you guys would have to discuss. We then would have to kind of shuffle Ray back, put his Swift back where it was, back where the Mistress was, and then we could put another one on the end there. But we haven't had anyone ask for that.
So for tonight, we are being asked to approve 4 Windjammer applications and 7 Day Sailor applications.
That's correct. That's correct.
And that's the
And
number of applications we received at the number that we're approving. Nobody was told no.
Nobody
Correct.
was told no, correct.
and there's an additional number of commercial lobster boats. Is that right?
There's
Okay.
there's one new person that's applying, Captain Feener. And he's a young man, and we can easily handle that because there's only really 2 other there's only 2 that are really full-time lobstermen, and the rest don't only run about 200 traps, so it wouldn't be crowded at all.
And these licenses are good. We revisit this in 3 years. Is that the pacing of this?
That's correct. 3-year
Okay.
term.
And one other question, I noticed everybody carefully lays out their schedule, but we don't have anything to do with the schedule. I don't want to be in the position of the select board reviewing and okaying a schedule. That's on you guys.
Yeah, that's something that I do, and
Yeah,
we
okay.
take care of that, correct.
I noticed the schedules were for 2023, or is that just,
It hasn't changed.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
I'll make a
Okay.
motion to approve the Windjammer licenses, the day sailor licenses, and the commercial fisherman applications.
okay, moved by Chris O. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
So do we need to
Crystal.
name them, or is this list that we have adequate for? What's
As
that?
submitted in the packet. I'll amend it to as submitted in the packet.
And I
Okay,
do know that Chris O has asserted that we do have Harbor Committee approval, even though it's not on the form. That's been accomplished.
Correct.
Correct.
All right,
and there
thank you.
wasn't major disagreement with that. It was a
No, they
unanimous.
agreed on all. And that is reflected in the minutes of their recent of the Harbor
Mhm.
Committee's last meeting.
Wonderful. Okay, so moved by Chris O, seconded by Chris Nolan. All in favor? Chris, I'll do a roll call here. Chris,
Aye.
Chris O,
Aye.
You like it?
Ken,
Aye.
and an aye from Allison. Also, very good. Let's moving on
That's all good.
to the select board meeting calendar for
Dixley, you're not muted.
2026. Any comments on what was in our packet?
It looks
Proposed?
beautifully simple because I think there's only one meeting that isn't just on the second, or maybe there's 2.
Yeah, I think it's only during the elections.
There's one on the election, and there was something else that was just
August is what you're thinking of, where it's actually the 1st and 3rd, which is that what we normally do anyway, right?
Oh, you mean
because
September?
it's September because of Labor Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being Labor Day is so late. I assume that's why that September one got pushed, because it's after Labor Day.
And November as well has delayed by a week.
But that's for the election. September is the only one that's a little because of a holiday. So looks great to me.
Okay, that's something we need to vote on also, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion to
so
approve the calendar as presented.
moved by Chris
second.
O, seconded by Ken, and all those in favor will do the Chris O. Can I vote from you?
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
and an aye from Allison. Also, moving on to committee appointments. And I didn't actually see which of the committees or boards have the opening. I know we were supposed to, planning board was
So
one.
there's alternate for planning board, alternate for ZBA. Actually, Jeremy, it's an alternate on ZBA, correct?
Yeah, I believe so. I'd have to
Yeah,
double
and
check,
then,
but-
yep, and then MRCAC.
What is
Sorry.
what is the status of MERCAC as far as appointments go and or terms? I didn't think we had determined yet when the terms would be, what the number would be. Do the people need to be from Camden? We don't have that written down anywhere, I don't think yet, do we? And
No.
Correct. Yeah, and I should have mentioned during my select board report that they have had a couple meetings, one sort of work and tour meeting, and then last night they had a more formal meeting, and the majority are wishing to continue with the broad mission that they were originally tasked with, which was to make recommendations to the select board for the resiliency of the watershed, sort of moving back to that more not so hyper-focused on the Montgomery Dam. We're in a little bit of a holding pattern right now as we find out whether we're going to have additional funding from grants coming through, or whether it's going to be whether there's going to be anything moving forward, or whether it's going to be more of a review of past information type of thing. But I think they want to continue meeting and be reviewing a lot of those reports. I think you make a good point, Chris, about when we get into actually appointing people, it's like, okay, well, how long are they on for? I think at this point, the more important thing is kind of inviting somebody into the discussion, and that's what I think Pat Beeling could offer. They discussed this a little bit at their meeting. As you can see, he's very, very qualified. Seth Taylor was a member of MERCAC who was appointed, and he was actually a Rockport resident, but highly knowledgeable with the watershed, and was also at the time a member of the McGonagall Watershed Association. He isn't able to continue and has, as you know, resigned at least a few months ago. And so Pat, I think the thought is that he's highly knowledgeable, especially as we move into looking at the high hazard dams and design changes that could make them more resilient, better able to manage water levels, that he could be really helpful with processing some of those technical reports, and that he would like to start coming to those meetings and participating as the others do. But since there isn't, at this point, there isn't something immediate that the group is being tasked with voting on and making a recommendation to the select board on, that that we would then vote on.
Well,
I don't think it's necessary to have formal terms, but I do see your point that if we're going to vote on somebody, then maybe.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know that, what was done for advertising for, maybe there's other people in the town who want to be part of this. Maybe there are openings, maybe there aren't openings. Is there a certain number of people that should be on this? I don't see that that's currently part of the There's committee bylaws. I don't know how that fits into an overall charter that, this is basically it's, kind of a subcommittee of the select board, like these other committees are, some of the other committees are as well. If this is really going to go on for longer, then we should, formalize it just like we do with the other committees, and have terms like we do, alternates like we do, and a stated time for when people can go ahead and apply to these things. Again, it may be a stipulation is that they need to be from Camden. Now, I know we've not done that with the cemetery committee, where we've got Parker Lake is Chip Lake, is part of that. So, and he lives in Lincolnville, but all of those sort of considerations, I think, should be made if this is going to go on. And before selecting other people to be part of this, I'd like to see how
So
long
maybe
that would be.
maybe a winter workshop could be between the select board and the current members of MRCAC to go over some of these items. And for now, what we're talking about is this will pass on approving his application because there isn't actually a process. But if Mr. Beeling has been in communication with MRCAC and has already, if they can avail him, if they can use him for advice, then they should for now. But we
Right.
will not act on it. And then let's take the time to figure out what MRCAC is going to be.
I think that
And
could
if
make
it's
sense.
just-
And that would be fine. I think they, reviewing a lot. Everybody also should know that there are many reports on the town website that have come out of that past NIFWIF funded work. The hyper focus has been on Montgomery because we're making a decision about that, but there's a lot of information out there, and that we could hold off on formal appointments.
I
But
think we all agree it's a lot of work that they can continue to do, but let's.
yeah,
And I think this is a committee that, this is an entity that I think it behooves us to have a few members from neighboring communities, because the McGonagall River and the lake are not just, it's not just Camden's lake. So I think if looking at it from the watershed perspective, let's be open to non-residents being part of that.
yeah. I mean, I think this is also an effort to be responsive to what we've heard, is that seeking broader input. And this is a person who lives on Norton Pond, is highly connected to the Watershed Association, and has a lot, just a lot of knowledge. Ken, do you have any?
Yeah,
comments?
I think that it deserves a discussion. We have a number of questions that Chris and you all have brought up about the composition and the task of the MRCAC. That is, the number of members, is that specified? The duration of membership, is that specified? Is the task of MRCAC, is that specified? And whether they can be residents or not, that's also not specified. I think before we continue on with MRCAC, the process should be addressed.
Yep. So let's think about planning. I like that idea of planning a workshop, especially for after we've heard about some of these pending grant applications, so we know what what's going to be coming up in front of the select board or not, and then the select board can kind of direct a little bit more what the task for MRCAC would be. I did hear from them. They were asking, what does the select board want us to do? And I said I was unable to answer that question because the select board hasn't talked about this much, and we don't yet know whether we're going to have funding that can be supportive of different types of committee activities. So as long as everybody is okay with them continuing to meet publicly and allowing
Yeah,
Of course,
it's a
the public and whoever else to participate in that, I will let them know that we're going to hold off on formal appointments until after a workshop.
Okay.
Does that work? Okay.
Yep. And I don't know, we don't, sometime around now, we usually come up with what is the budget schedule going to be like and the budget meeting pieces, but not seeing that yet. Maybe, it's an interesting idea to, if possible, always use the second meeting for some sort of a workshop thing. That might be kind of interesting. I know even our neighboring town only has, I think, meeting a month, to try to, if it could be, to have the second meeting of the month being the workshopy sort of meeting of whatever the heck subject. That might be good.
Yep.
And to have that, one of those could certainly be what to do with the group of citizens that we have with MRCAC. What's the best thing? Because I don't know, is there any other working group that's currently working on the dam of any sort?
But
Or
we're
are
kind
any
of
other-
running off tangent. We have two other applications to
Okay.
No,
consider.
but I think you're right, Chris. There are a number of other groups that are interested in, so having a larger conversation about who's going to be involved makes lots of sense. There was the effort that you and I were working on a
Right.
little bit, and so lots we could talk about, and I agree, good to leave it back to the select board. Planning board, Jeremy, is there, saw Peter
Sure.
Burke. What-
Peter
Sure, I
Burke
could,
is alternate.
yeah, there's ZBA has an alternate and the planning board alternate needs. I spoke with Madeline Martindale about both planning board and ZBA. She said, whatever. Our ZBA needs some help, and I think she would be great. Peter Burke, I talked to him. He had an interest in the planning board. He's been, he's a contractor. He's very active in the community. He had an interest in the planning board, and we need some more members. So I think that's great. I think we'll need one more ZBA member or two. It's weird. The ZBA has 3 alternates for some reason. But then we'll still need one more planning board member as an alternate. So if you can appoint Peter Burke to the planning board and Madeline Martindale to the ZBA, that would be wonderful. She's great. I met with her. She had an interest. She is a neighbor and is an acquaintance of Pat Chen, who's been on the board for a long time. And I think they communicate about things and just process. And she has a desire she's retired and she has a desire to give back to the community. She said Conservation Commission, ZBA, or Planning Board, and ZBA I think is a good fit for her, and we need that.
Invite her to attend the Conservation Commission meetings
Will do.
too.
Yep.
Okay, any
Make
comments
a motion
before a
to-
motion?
I was gonna make a motion to approve Madeline Martindale to the ZBA and Peter Burke to planning board,
I'll second that.
both as alternates.
Motion by Chriso, seconded by Chris Nolan. Roll call, Chriso,
Aye.
Chris,
I
Ken,
Aye.
and an aye from Allison.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Peter actually came to the workshop with the planning board
He was there the other night.
So thank you both. Thank you all for doing that.
I think that the ZBA has more alternates because of the irregular nature of how
Sure.
often they meet.
Yep.
So it's sort of like, let's have more people who might
Yeah.
be able to show up when we need to
Yeah.
do.
Right, a history of quorum issues.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy.
have about the different committees. Have we tried in the past, and maybe did it not work, to have a designated time of year when notification of and applications are accepted for potential openings?
Yeah,
Has
we've
it just
we've
not
tried
worked?
that.
That way, people just need to, I guess, somehow be in the know. I mean, how do they know when?
Janice
oh,
advertises everything in
Right.
multiple places.
But
And-
it's the same thing as everything where, most people
Yeah.
don't actually,
Yeah.
the traditional
Yeah.
things the town does to recruit are not the way that most people actually
Right.
prefer to find out about things.
The best way to recruit people really is word of mouth. And that's, it goes for everybody. Like if you know people who are interested, just encourage them to come and fill out an application. Even if there aren't any openings at the time, it's always better for us to have applications on file for the future.
And people have to get off the board for random reasons at times before their terms come up. I mean, look at Chriso, Ethan Shaw, for instance,
I was
too.
saying, well, we had three of us ran for all totally different reasons, had to leave left the planning
Right.
same
Same time. Yeah.
time, but also had to do it at not a specific time of year.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, we are going to conclude the public portion of our meeting and move into an executive session. If I can get a motion.
So moved.
I'll second it.
All those in favor, we'll go with a roll call. Chris, so,
Aye.
sorry.
Aye. No, sorry. Go ahead,
That was
Chris.
my
He's
bad.
the one that called. She called you. It was just
Well, I
typing.
started the go with Nolan Rowe.
I
Rose.
know, there's lots I could do to be, yep.
Aye. That's an aye.
Nolan,
Aye.
gross.
So is this to adjourn or is this to open the executive session? Because it's not clear to me.
Well,
It's
there's a,
it's both. You won't have any actions coming out of executive session. It's just to give you a update on a legal.
Adjourning the
Matter.
public meeting and convening executive session.
So we need to have some statement of the precise nature of the business of the executive session, rather than just MRS 6A. I looked it up. It's just something we need to do formally. So what is the precise nature of our executive session meeting?
Do we need, I think we can't, I think all we can do is.
We can say it's a legal
state-
matter.
It's to
Yes.
confer
State
with
that.
legal counsel.
Yeah,
That sounds adequately precise.
that's what the code says we can do.
I think we can share more details if we want, but maybe
I
that's
don't
something
think
that we can be
so.
educated on in the executive
Oh.
session about how much we could have shared in the public session, or Bill can tell us now.
But we have a couple people still on.
Yeah, and YouTube
Right,
still.
we have a,
Once you guys adjourn, I'll close everybody out except for
Yeah.
you guys.
right, but the reason we're still have
We
people on
need
is
to
because we're
adjourn the select
discussing,
board
we
meeting
actually
then.
haven't
We haven't
voted,
adjourned. Yeah.
we haven't actually voted to do this, because Ken was asking questions that I think are reasonable about the process for going into this private session. And so we haven't concluded our vote to do that.
So we are voting both to adjourn and to begin an executive session. So I will say aye.
Okay, very good. Rowe,
Aye.
Nolan,
Aye.
and an aye from McKellar. So we will move into executive session. I'm gonna end the live streaming and ask that others leave, and then whoever is running the Zoom meeting could please lock the meeting.
Says we're still live on YouTube.
Right. Audra, are you in control of this, or is that Camden Select Board, whoever that is? Is that Janice?
Janet, yeah, and Janice, she said once
Audra's the
everybody.
co-host, so I can.
Yeah, but I don't think I have the ability to turn off the YouTube feed.
That's what I was trying to. I think